Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. 150 years ago, right now, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The first day of the Battle of Gettysburg, the clash between Lee's army, dashing from the south into Pennsylvania, and the Army of the Potomac, led by suddenly the newly appointed commander, George Meade, who heretofore had been a corps commander, was elevated to command the whole army suddenly after the failure of Mr. Hooker and Lincoln and the commander of the army, Halleck, growing tired of Mr. Hooker's excuses and blame shifting. So Meade was brought in, and Meade said right away, I'm going to bring Lee to battle if I can, and I'm going to seek to resolve this conflict going on now for 2 years with great sacrifice on both sides, the North and the South. The point, the first day of Gettysburg, is that intelligence in all conflicts, in all wars, intelligence is critical to the success. You fight a battle when you know where the enemy is, when you know the scale of the battle, and hopefully that is the intention of all generals, to have much more at the point of conflict than the adversary does. Mr. Lee's cavalry, General Lee's cavalry, led by Jeb Stuart, was away from the infantry, the three corps of infantry. And therefore, Lee lacked eyes. He lacked eyes as he approached what becomes the ultimate battle of the Civil War at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. However, Mr. Meade, General Meade, did have one cavalry unit, and that cavalry unit was very important just in the last days. Neither side was using cavalry to both screen the infantry and also your probe, your eyes, where the enemy is. Remember, this is before the internet, this is before flying, this is before what we understand to be intelligence gathering. So it was the good success of the intelligence gathered in those final moments, the final days, the end of June and the beginning of July. July 1st was the first day of battle. And because it had rained on the 29th heavily, and both sides had marched very little that day, and on the 30th it was a drizzly kind of day, but you could move. Because of that, the left side, the left wing of the Army of the Potomac was moving up gingerly towards Gettysburg. Gettysburg is the center of the spokes of the wheel of all the roads coming in that part of Pennsylvania. General Lee's army was to the west and the north of Gettysburg. The Meade's army, the Army of the Potomac, is coming from Maryland, crossing into Pennsylvania from the south and the southeast. So these two armies don't know where each other are at the moment, but they're looking. And Meade had the advantage of having Brigadier General John Buford, who was riding a cavalry contingent, a cavalry brigade on the left wing. And Buford got to a point south of Gettysburg where he sends his probes out, and his probes find the advance of one of the corps of the Confederates closing on Gettysburg. Pendergast's North Carolina outfit was out front, and it approached on the morning of the 30th. It approached Pettigrew, not Pendergast, excuse me, that was another commander. Pettigrew's division approached Gettysburg. He spotted cavalry inside Gettysburg itself. It was a small town, but it was a large part of the Pennsylvania success at the time, Gettysburg. And he backed off when he saw Union cavalry. He reported it as such to General Lee, but General Lee didn't believe it. He didn't believe there was a Union army there. He thought that the contest was well ahead of him. He was marching around looking to draw the Union into a contest. He wanted to destroy the Union army. So he did not take into account that there was Union cavalry in Gettysburg. That Union cavalry reported in detail that the Confederate Army was closing on Gettysburg. So Meade knew and understood long before Lee did that there was a major battle ahead and brought his corps up quickly. I tell this long story not because it immediately applies to where we are in the 21st century, but it underlines the value of intelligence gathering. You must know your adversary at all times. You must probe for him. You must know where he is and must have a clear understanding of his strength to the point of battle. Without good intelligence, you're very likely to meet either defeat or a stalemate. That good intelligence, by accident at Gettysburg, was the key to the success of the first day, because the Confederates hit with 2 corps from the north and overwhelmed 3 much smaller corps of the Union, but they didn't break, overwhelmed them. The cavalry unit was critical because by that time, George Meade knew to get the whole army into Gettysburg. And on the second day and on the third day, Meade's army withstood the assaults of the Confederacy. And that failure of Lee and the retreat on July 4th was the high water mark of the Confederacy. Of course, within 2 years, the whole country would have been exhausted by the war, and Mr. Lincoln would prevail. The South would surrender, and the Second American Revolution would end to the increasing freedoms of all people, including those who had been called slaves. That's 150 years ago right now. Intelligence. So I welcome tonight the 2 men I depend on intelligence in this present conflict by the United States of America. And we're at war right now with what's said to be stateless terror, the jihadists. Mr. Roggio, Bill Roggio of the Long War Journal, that's an intelligence journal. And Tom Joscelyn of the Long War Journal, that's an intelligence journal. These 2 men are gathering as a cavalry force would gather. They're probing all the time to find where the enemy is, what the enemy's up to. Gentlemen, forgive me for going on at length. I wanted to undermine that 150 years ago today is right now. Without good intelligence, you don't know whether you're winning and losing. And if you have it, your advantage is such you can carry the day. So I begin with a very grim report, but you're putting it up fresh on the Long War Journal of the butchery, the murder, the deliberate execution of a Catholic priest in Syria by people we believe are part of or participating in the Free Syrian Army or the rebellion against the Assad regime. Bill, I start with you. It's your report right now. Who killed this Catholic priest and why? Good evening to you.
Good evening, John. Yes, a brutal video emerges of what appears to be the beheading of a Catholic priest and 2 others. The al-Nusra Front, which for the people in the Levant, which is al-Qaeda's affiliate in Syria, is thought to have actually carried out this execution. The Vatican stated today that the Nusra Front is thought to have kidnapped this Catholic priest on June 23rd, and what they had said is the reports of how he was killed is unclear. This video emerges today, and reports of his death emerged today, and so yeah, there you have it. This is classic Zarqawi. Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, the former leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq. This is on par with that. It's a very brutal video. I posted it just really for the fact to remind people that this is what the enemy that we face, that al-Qaeda isn't by any means defeated and is in fact ascendant in Syria. And they pull out what looks like a kitchen knife and try and hack these 3 guys' heads off. It's absolutely probably one of the most horrific things I've seen in jihadi propaganda since I started observing this and since the war began, really, even before.
We'll speak of who the perpetrators are, but right now, Mr. Joscelyn, good evening to you. This video, it's very fresh, and you have confirmed it. I want to make sure this is all confirmed, Tom. We believe that this video reflects an actual event. There is no staging to this. Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, John. No, I think this video is legitimate. As Bill said, Catholic Church has come out and confirmed that this happened to a priest, I don't think there's really any way you could fake what's on the video. Unfortunately, it is absolutely gruesome. And one of the things that's interesting about this, just from an analytical perspective, of course, there's the emotional aspect of seeing such a horrendous video like this. But from an analytical perspective, Al Qaeda and its affiliated groups in Syria have been, sort of abstaining from this type of gruesome atrocity because of what the effects that it had inside Iraq, where they really alienated a good amount of population or something like this. But here they've just basically gone full Khmer Rouge on, a Catholic priest and 2 others.
And Tom, at this point, and we'll discuss about who the perpetrators are, this video is fresh up. Are you seeing responses because of the confusion of who's the good guys and who's the bad guys in Syria? Is there confusion in the media so far?
There's confusion. I'm afraid there's widespread confusion, not just in the media but elsewhere, that we really don't know, and this is something we talk about quite a bit. We don't know. There's a black box in terms of where al-Qaeda ends or begins and the other groups end or begin. In other words, where does Al-Qaeda and its affiliated groups, how contained are they within the rebellion? And one of the things we highlight quite frequently in the Lone War Journal is that the Al-Nusra Front, which is Al-Qaeda's affiliate in Syria, likes to frequently claim joint attacks with other affiliated groups. And if these groups are fighting alongside Al-Nusra, that's certainly a disturbing sign that Al-Qaeda's pull inside Syria is not something that can be contained.
Tom Joscelyn and Bill Roggio, the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, will speak in a moment of the perpetrators of this outrage, this crime. However, right now, what these two gentlemen represent is very good intelligence. We will analyze it in a moment, but you must have the facts. You must know where the enemy is. You must know when they change tactics. You must know the capabilities. You must know of what the United States is committing itself to in Syria, in the Levant. And right now, it is very difficult to understand an American policy that has anything to do with this video. I do not recommend this video to anyone. I want you to know that it exists. You don't have to be at Gettysburg to understand what's about to happen 150 years ago right now is massacre. We're not talking about tens of thousands. We're talking about 3 men executed by whom? Who did this? And what do we have to do with them? I'm John Batchelor.